So I'll tell you what. I mean, like I said, baseball season currently going on. Absolutely been loving with what I've been seeing. And the team last year that got into the World Series primed for bigger successes for this up and coming season. I am super excited for what will happen with the Arizona Diamondbacks. So joining me, Millard Thomas. All right. So, I mean, this was probably one of the most magical seasons last season gave us because we were going into a rookie season with Corbin Carroll, and we were kind of coming into like a team that not a lot of people have done a ton of research. And then all of a sudden, this team just exploded and they got to the World Series. I haven't felt a vibe like this since 2001. And I was there. I was there watching it from my television. Greatest World Series I think we've ever seen in our lifetime. What was that? Take me back to that. When the Diamondbacks got thus far, proving doubters and proving a lot of just, eye rollers wrong. Like, this is definitely something to get excited because there is something special about this team.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you for having me on your show today. The entire run was crazy because, yeah, you come into the season, you're like, all right, we just want a feel good season. D-backs show some progression, kind of like where the Cincinnati Reds are this year. A young team on the rise, win around 78 to around a 500 record. That would have been a good season for the D-backs last year. But then the first half of the season, they were leading the NL West, tied with the Dodgers at the All-Star break. So you're like, okay, I have to kind of reevaluate my expectations for this D-backs team. Corbin Carroll, one of the best players in baseball immediately. Ketel Marte bounced back. You had Kelly, you had Gallen. You had a full squad last year. Gabriel Moreno, Lourdes Gurriel, those were great acquisitions as well. But then you get to the second half of the season, and the D-backs did the exact opposite of what they did in the first half. In the second half, post All-Star break, they were one of the worst teams in Major League Baseball in the second half last season, and they kind of just limped their way to the postseason. It was not inspiring at all. They clinched their postseason berth on a day that they lost to the Houston Astros. So it wasn't like even a big celebration when they did make the playoffs when they clinched, because they only made it because another team lost, and that got them into the postseason. And so for the D-backs, after seeing their whole second half, you're like, I really don't know how much I should trust this team. They were incredible in the first half, but now the 3-month sample size of this team being absolutely bad. And so it's like, you get to the postseason, what should my expectations be for the D-backs? Should I lean more into what I saw in the first half of the season, or is the recent memory of what the D-backs did the last 2 months more translatable to what we're going to see in the postseason? And for the D-backs, I was like, listen, make it past the wild card round, and you have had a great season. I thought they were good enough to beat Milwaukee, because I never thought Milwaukee was that great anyway. They had a couple of elite pitchers, but that offense on paper was never that good. So I was like, D-backs are at least can match up with Milwaukee, and I think they could beat Milwaukee, but that's where their postseason is going to end. They're going to get swept by the LA Dodgers in the very next round, and it's still going to be an incredible D-back season. That didn't happen. The D-backs beat the Brewers. Then they go into LA. They dominate Clayton Kershaw in that game one. You have that 4 home run inning in that finale. And then against the NLCS Philadelphia Phillies, you have to go back to Philadelphia. You have to win 2 games in Philly. After that Game 5 in Arizona, Jeff Passan was tweeting, hey, they started the wave out in Arizona. This series a wrap. D-backs got to go back to Philadelphia, and it's a wrap. Mad Dog Russo was on his show. No chance the D-backs go back and beat Philly. I'll retire the very next day if they come back and beat Philadelphia in Philly. What did the D-backs do? They come back and they have 2 fantastic games in Philadelphia, shock the fans. Brendan Pfaadt, the rookie, steps up in that Game 7. Now the D-backs are going to the World Series. And at that point, you're like, they already beat the Brewers. They already swept the Dodgers. They took down Philly and Philly. You're like, at this point, the D-backs can do anything. I'm putting all my eggs in the basket that the D-backs are going to win the World Series. Obviously, that didn't happen. I still think if Paul Sewald doesn't blow the first game of the World Series, maybe we're looking at something different if the D-backs go up 2-0 in Texas. I feel like the series changes if Merrill Kelly still has that dominant performance in Game 2. But regardless, D-backs blew away expectations that anyone put on them last year. It was a feel-good season. It feels like they were ahead of schedule, but I'm sure you want to talk about this year because the vibes that we're feeling right now as D-backs fans in 2024, the exact opposite of what we were feeling on May 21st in 2023.
It's funny because, and a lot of people, and look, I grew up a baseball guy. I mean, it's in my DNA. I've always loved watching baseball. I mean, I got my mother from Long Island who loves the
Okay.
Yankees. And then, of course, my old man, he loves the Dodgers. And so I grew up watching a lot of that baseball because it was like I'm hanging out with my grandfather. It's storytelling. There's always something that I could get interested in when I pop on the television and watch a little baseball. But the funny thing is that it's insanity because when people thought, oh, this World Series is going to be a snooze fest, I'm like,
Mhm.
I think that way. You don't know baseball because
Yeah.
in the end, you got two teams, one that ain't had a World Series in 20 years, and then another one who is yet to have a World Series in their franchise. So it's like, I got the best of both. How can we not get excited for this? So when you look at this with this young roster, because it felt a lot like it was a lot of young pieces that were starting to kind of come together. Corbin,
Mhm.
Carroll. I feel like, Christian Walker, he's in his prime.
Mhm.
I got, Lourdes Gurriel, he's in his prime. So all these young cast of characters now on this Arizona roster. You got a taste of the World Series last season. They are so hungry for higher expectations this season. Am I right?
Yeah, I honestly thought that the D-backs going to the World Series last year, I thought they were going to carry that momentum into this season, and especially losing that World Series, I would have expected them to have a chip on their shoulder this entire year to get back there and redeem themselves. I think that they do. The only issue is the offense can't hit, the rotation is hurt, and the bullpen has been shaky. So it's like I go into the offseason, Mike Hazen, he hit everything on the wish list. We thought he upgraded third base with Eugenio Suarez. So far, defensively, he's looked great. Offensively, it's been a bust. He signed Jock Peterson and Randall Grichuk to be the DHs. That has been a fantastic move. Erod, we have yet to see him debut for the D-backs. Jordan Montgomery, I think he's been pretty good this season. He's had some shaky starts. But for the most part, I thought the D-backs crushed it this offseason. So it's like you were a year ahead of the schedule, already going to the World Series. Now you added 2 All-Stars to your rotation. You added a better third baseman. You added legit power hitters to your DH. Why should this team not be better in 2024? And right now, there's a lot of variables to it, but you just go up and down the lineup. Lourdes Gurriel, after his hot start to the season, has been horrendous the last 20 plus games. Eugenio Suarez has been bad the entire year. Corbin Carroll, the man who had 25 plus home runs, 50 stolen bases last year. First time a major league player has ever done that before in their rookie season. He has been one of the worst players in Major League Baseball this season, and that's not hyperbole. If you look at the D-backs offense in the month of May, their best player is Kevin Newman, and that should never be the case. I like the fact that Kevin Newman is carrying in the month of May, but he should be the fifth best D-backs player during this month. He should not be by far and away the best player in the lineup. The rotation, Gallen's been great the whole season, but guys that you needed to step up in the rotation with some of those injuries like the Kellys and the Erods. Slade, we just saw him get lit up for 6 earned runs in his first start against the Dodgers. He's given up at least 6 earned runs in 3 of his last 4 starts. Ryan Nelson hasn't been good. When you look at the bullpen, who can you trust outside of a Ryan Thompson, a Paul Sewald? Kevin Ginkel was the man last year for the D-backs as the go-to setup guy. He just has not been consistent at all this season for the D-backs. So when you look at the 2024 Arizona team, last year, they got so many like career years out of guys and just good seasons out of the Lourdes Gurriel. And for some reason this year, the Gurriels, the Gabbies, the Carrolls, up and down the rotation and bullpen, they're just not getting the same performances. And I don't really know what to do. The D-backs just have to play better if they ever want to turn it around and potentially get back to, another World Series.
Well, and we can tell you, and like to me, I've always loved, the baseball superstition because with me, it's like anything can happen in this game. It's
Mhm.
unpredictable, and to be honest, I mean, the good thing of it is you're not far down below the well like we're seeing right now with where I live at in Denver with the Colorado Rockies.
Yeah.
But in the end, yeah,
Sorry.
10 games behind, the Dodgers, but in the end, I've always thought of it this way: April, May, and June, potentially half the season of July, is where you kind of get, you get the fun out the way. It's usually when baseball's back, we're seeing different names, we're kind of getting an idea what we're looking at. But then the bottom half of July all the way to August, September, October, that's when things get kicking. So from last season, where the team looked really good up in the first half, not as hot in the second half, superstitious thought, could we maybe see an opposite? And is that something Torey Lovullo has kind of kept in the back of his mind this year?
Yeah, I think that's kind of like the saving grace and the working theory for a lot of D-backs fans in general, because you kind of hope by the All-Star break, like Erod should be back in like hopefully 3 weeks. Perdomo should be back in the same time frame, as well as Alec Thomas. Merrill Kelly probably won't be back to the All-Star break. So to go along with your theory, you're hoping post All-Star break, you start the second half with a rotation of Gallen, Kelly, Erod, Montgomery, and Fott. Like, if you have all 5 of those healthy, it's like you have the Infinity Gauntlet if you're Thanos. Now the lineup, you just have to hope that in the second half of the season, some of those guys wake up, because Corbin Carroll last year, way better in the first half than he was in the second half. So like you're saying, hopefully some of these things can just flip. Last year, D-backs were so elite in the first half, slumped in the second half. Maybe that could flip this season. And then your other point that you mentioned, that third wild card spot, kind of wide open. If you're the D-backs, you already know. Just get in and you feel like you can make the magic happen once again. But you're going to have to get in, and it's going to be tough because that third wildcard spot probably will come down to an NL West team, either the San Diego Padres or the San Francisco Giants. I don't think either team is like a world beater, or I don't even know if they're like true World Series contenders, but I am scared of them of stealing that last spot from the D-backs. But if the D-backs can turn it around, I do think they have more talent than anyone else who's in competition for that third wildcard spot right now.
Yeah, and so mentioning about the National League West, because as of right now, I know everybody is basically like, oh, brother, LA does it again. Shohei Ohtani and Tyler Glasnow. I will be there at the game June 17th in Coors Field when they play the Rockies, because I have no business with the Rockies at all. But Coors is beautiful. Love, seeing the scenery there in that ballpark. But I'm getting a good look, and I'm always am looking with a lot of teams of like, what's interesting? What are some of the things I kind of have to look at? Are there some cracks in there that could potentially be a problem somewhere in the middle of or down the stretch during the season? So when you look at the competition in the National League West, we know that the Dodgers, they loaded up. It's a World Series or bust kind of year. To me personally, I feel like this is a problem for 10 years. If you're really looking at it from a long-term standpoint, the Padres they fleeced Miami with getting Luis Ariz, but it's like the competition is very much brewing up. And so when you are the D-backs, regardless of this current slump, I think they got to have this to where it's like, listen, we know competition is really heating up, but it will not justify what we basically have pulled off by the time we were up and in the postseason. I think that's kind of safe to say, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at this NL West, I mean, the San Diego Padres, they're not afraid to make moves. Like, you can't sleep on this division. Yes, I think the D-backs are more talented than probably the Padres, but they still got Dylan Cease, the number 1 in the rotation. Yu Darvish is actually having himself a fantastic year. And then if Joe Musgrove can turn it around, like, that's still a very elite 1 through 3 in your rotation. And like you said, they already made one upgrade this in season by going out there and acquiring a Luis Ariz, who just hits 350 for an entire season, like one of the best pure hitters in Major League Baseball. The Giants, on paper, entering every season, I'm never scared of the Giants. I never feel like their talent level is as good as the way people talk about them. But then you get to the end of the season, I'm like, dang, they're right there in that wild card mix. They can make a move if they want and get aggressive and probably push themselves over the edge. They need Blake Snell to kind of a bounce back, but they're always better than I think the talent shows on paper. They always play above expectations. And so you're going to have your Dodgers. They're going to run away with the division, and that's okay. You let the Dodgers take the division. They're the NL West Kings. We don't care about the regular season division titles. We'll see the Dodgers in the postseason just like we did last year. But for that third wild card spot, I'm definitely concerned with the San Diego Padres and the San Francisco Giants, especially the Padres, because we know that boy AJ Preller, their GM, he's not afraid to trade the Hall if it means bringing back a superstar.
So outside of the division, because we know that the National League as a whole has basically been upgrading. We know that the Cubs right now, Shota Imanaga right now is having a Cy Young winning season right now. And I mean, the Brewers are just always questionable to me because they could lose pieces, and yet all of a sudden, William Contreras is going on a tear. And then you look at the Braves, and they're the Braves. I mean, they're going to load up just almost as similarly with the Dodgers. Are there any other concerns outside this division you kind of look into, even with that third wild card spot that could be an issue?
If I had to pick a dark horse team, I guess, in the National League outside the NL West, I don't think I would pick an NL Central team. I definitely expect either the Cubs or Brewers to get one of the wild card spots. I will say the Brewers are way better than I would have expected this year, especially after trading Corbin Burns. Like you said, they're just one of those teams that feels like they lose talent every year, but somehow remain status quo. I don't get it. Great job over there by them. But I would say the team that would scare me the most, maybe in the second half if they get healthy, would be the team that I compared the D-backs to earlier on this podcast, the Cincinnati Reds. I think they're just way loaded with talent. Now, I think it could be too early in their timeline, but in the second half, if they get hot with the Dela Cruzes, and then you get like a Matt McClain back, and your Spencer Steers heat up, and your Encarnacion Strands heat up, then that rotation has been very good this year with the Ashcrafts and the Hunter Green. It feels like that lineup and that rotation feels like people are starting to develop and take that next step forward in their progression. I don't know if this year is going to be the year that the Reds make the postseason. I still think they'll hover around 500. I'll say they win like 79, 80 games this year. But I wouldn't be surprised if they got hot in the second half of the season and they were the team that came for that third wildcard spot and stole it from the rest of the NL West.
So, a question I've always asked a lot of people who have covered, specific Major League Baseball teams, but it all kind of comes around in the same circle. Because I've asked this. I don't think I have ever seen a more horrifying look with umpire play like I have this year. And I think most of this is it's kind of proving a point. Are they doing this because they want to speed the process of, the automatic strike zone that everybody keeps, kind of screaming and hollering like we need this right now? And then in the end, I mean, look, I already know with this whole Angel Hernandez thing, the worst thing you could do was give so much to the umpires union that now you're just trapped. I mean, what has been your thoughts with the umpire play? I just felt like, look, I can deal with a few horrific calls. And I mean, I know a lot of people kind of feel the same way about the NFL when it comes to certain flags and certain penalties. But at this point, this is probably the most horrifying I think I've seen. I've got both managers getting thrown out. Like, what seems to be the issue?
Yeah, umps have been horrendous for years, and I think they're just making a case right now. Like, yeah, guys, like it's the end of days for our union, so let's just go out there and just call it how we see it. Like, it don't even matter what we say anymore; they're gonna replace us anyway. So maybe they're just kind of doing it out of spite right now because you see the new rules that they already implemented with the pitch clock and some other things. Like, it's been a huge success. Like the pace of play for baseball games right now, like even that Dodgers game one, like that was a quick, snappy game. Despite 10 runs being scored. So we love the pace of play right now. We love all the new rules, and robo umps are definitely coming to baseball. And I think a big issue people have had is just when you see such an egregious call and there's just nothing you can do about it. When it's bases loaded, bottom of the eighth, bottom of the ninth, and you're star players up at the plate and he just strikes out on a ball that's 3 feet off the plate. And it's like, what are you even doing here if you're the umpire? Why are you getting paid? And then you can't do anything about it if you're the fan, if you're the player, the manager. All you can do is go out there, yell your head off at the ump, and then get ejected for the rest of the game. So it's like there was no solutions to like have that closure if you were a player or a fan. So I think with the automatic ball strike system, I think it's going to curtail a lot of issues that we have with the umpires. I think it will actually speed up the game even more because you will take out all that unnecessary arguing. There won't be any more arguments. If you think a ball strike is called wrong, you just challenge it, and then within seconds, you would know what the correct call is. So I'm actually so excited. I love every new rule MLB implements. I think it helps the game. I'm all about the evolution of the game, and I'm just happy to see baseball finally get out of some of their old stuck ways.
Yeah, my only hope is that, the question mark will be like, what do we do about the lengths of the season? Because we know that, the NBA and NHL, they've been in several conversations about that. I've always said this was my kind of theory with this is I think if you take out the 62 games and give me 50 half the season to where I know I've got that all-star break right there in between, and then you've got that remaining 50, that will still give me an even balance to where it's not so long. It's not like dreading so long to where these players, we know that they basically, their recovery times are different than other sports. And so I think if you do that, hell, baseball could be very much on the right tracks. They may not trump the NFL when it comes to viewership and sellers market and, and streaming, but hopefully they could be on the right path to where they're not on a potential downfall when it comes to this. That's my only hope of it. So, my friend, covering the Diamondbacks for as long as you have and covering a major sport in the state of Arizona, okay, and now has 3 major sport teams. The Suns, the Diamondbacks, and the Cardinals.
We did lose one. I work for the Coyotes, RIP.
And I got to tell you, man, I mean, what was the fan base vibe when it comes to Arizona sports? Because we know that the biggest thing was it's hockey in the desert, all until the Vegas Golden Knights were born. And then all of a sudden, the market started changing from here on out. I feel bad for many Coyote fans for multiple reasons because, number one, you are playing amongst a collegiate arena with Arizona State, with no disrespect to them. But it's like, it just didn't have a good look and a good feel. And then all of a sudden, they talked about, oh, we found some land in Scottsdale. And then all of a sudden, the Scottsdale mayor's like, we are not just sharing our water source and none of that. And then all of a sudden, now the team's going to Salt Lake. And so I'm like, this just has not felt so good for at least for the players, the fan base, and many people like yourself that have worked around the team. Well, what was that energy? I mean, just covering a team in Arizona and even just being a fan of from previously all 4 sports teams to now having 3. Like, how so invested these fans are, and then now having this bittersweet moment, winning the last game of potentially ever for the Coyotes.
Yeah, I think, I love Arizona fans. I think they do a good job of showing up. Maybe not always when their teams aren't in the postseason, but when the teams are good in Arizona, you can expect Arizona fans in the building. Tough to see the Coyotes go, but may not be the end of it. The Coyotes are still in play to get the auction. I still am employed, so I still got to talk positive about my team. So they're still working to get the team back, hopefully in 5 years or less. So hold out hope like I am that it's not the end of the Arizona Coyotes just yet, just a temporary. We'll see you soon. We'll see you later.
Yeah, believe me, I'm crossing my fingers, holding my hope that this is not, this is not a forever goodbye. This is until at some point next time we're back in it because, in the end, I mean, a lot of people have been asking for, the Atlanta Thrashers to come back and then all this stuff. So we'll see, man. It's going to be very interesting. But again, I think when Arizona sports is on it, they're very competitive. They're very energized. I've yet to catch a game in Chase Field, but I've heard many great things about the ballpark. It's such a great, watch. And then in the end, it's definitely affordable because I ain't paying $500 on a nosebleed when I'm in LA. No, and I'm paying that man's contract, and especially when you got new international money along the way. So, Millard, really great stuff, man. Appreciate you taking the time. Where can everybody find you to find those slithering serpientes that we call the Arizona Diamondbacks?
Yes, please follow the show account wherever you stream podcasts on all streaming platforms. Please hit subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube. Follow my personal account at CareerThomas24 on Twitter or Millard.Thomas123 on Instagram. Updates. I'm going to the games, doing it all. So please follow me on all the socials or look up Locked On Diamondbacks, both Twitter and Instagram as well.
Beautiful, man. Millard, thank you so much for coming on, man. Appreciate the time. We'll see what happens with the Diamondbacks. But again, magical moments can always happen when you think about it in the game of baseball, man. Take care, and we'll see you soon.
Have a good night, sir.